Number 10. The Wedge of Ayud. The aluminum wedge of Ayud is either a mysterious piece of early technology that doesn't make any sense to anyone, or something left behind by aliens. It's definitely controversial ever since it was discovered in 1973 in Romania on the muddy bank of the Mers River. Some reports claim that the object was discovered under a pile of sand, alongside a collection of mastodon bones. What makes this object so curious is the simple fact that it's crafted from aluminum and was found near fossils that date back around 10,000 years. As you might already know, humans didn't make aluminum until the 1800s, and so the object is quite the anomaly. And while you might be thinking that somebody could have just dropped the artifact in the sand by accident and it got buried, other reports have claimed that it has a thick layer of oxide on it that dates back 400 years. Even the Archaeological Institute of Cluj-Napoca allegedly confirmed the artifact's age. However, there is no current information on what techniques they used to date the artifact. Additionally, there is no information on what the artifact could have been used for. It looks like a simple wedge. It has no immediate use that's recognizable. And after 1995, the wedge vanished. It had been on display at a local museum in Romania, but one day it was simply gone, and nobody currently knows where it is. There are definitely pictures that confirms its existence, but where it's gone is a total mystery. Number 9. Greek fire. Greek fire was the medieval equivalent to the flamethrower. It was an incendiary weapon first utilized in warfare back in 678 AD. What makes this such a remarkable technology is that all these years later, nobody has been able to replicate the formula that the Greeks used to create the highly flammable liquid known as Greek fire. Greek fire was no ordinary weapon. This stuff was so strong that it could be catapulted at the enemy in the form of incendiary bombs, it could be sprayed under pressure like a flamethrower to destroy enemy ships from a distance, and it could even light the surface of the water on fire to create huge walls of flames that crippled enemy warships. It has been claimed that Greek fire was the most devastating weapon on Earth for 700 years, keeping the ancient city of Constantinople liberated from all those who would attack. Greek fire was such a pivotal weapon in the arsenal of the ancient Greeks that its recipe never fell into foreign hands, and eventually, it just kind of faded away into the history books. But there are definitely true accounts of the fire being used. In a 12th century illuminated manuscript, there are ancient illustrations of a battle in the 1820s in which a giant flamethrower-like weapon was used to destroy the ships of Thomas the Slav. And the 6th century historian Theophanes even wrote that Greek fire caused enemies to shiver in terror. Have you ever witnessed someone use a flamethrower? Was it terrifying? Did they burn anything? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Titanic for more exciting videos just like this one. Number 8. Damascus steel. Damascus steel is the most legendary type of metal ever crafted by human hands. It is still recognizable today by the distinct wavy light and dark patterns seen on its surface. Damascus steel is beautiful, and it was highly valued hundreds of years ago because of its extremely sharp edge, its rigid strength, and its shocking flexibility. Any weapon crafted out of Damascus steel was seen as far superior to all else. And despite all the technology we have today, scientists still have been unable to replicate or surpass the sheer quality of ancient Damascus steel. This is something scientists simply can't do. They can get to the moon and they can build a nuclear bomb, but they can't create a sword better than a Damascus steel sword. One of the reasons that scientists are failing in their attempts is that Damascus steel was cast from a special type of steel, which was originally made in India at least 2,000 years ago. The Indians perfected the method, and Damascus steel became hugely popular in the 3rd and 4th centuries. It actually got its name because much of the steel was traded to the ancient city of Damascus, in what is today Syria. But by the 1700s, the source material for Damascus steel was completely lost to history. Since then, not a single new Damascus steel tool or weapon has been cast, making this arguably the most precious metal on the planet. Number 7. The Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is often hailed as the world's first ever computer. But despite all the praise this thing gets, scientists don't really know what it is, what it was used for, or where it even came from. The best that anyone can come up with is that the device replicated the motions of the heavens. By just holding this mechanism in your hands, you could track the route taken by the sun, the moon, and the planets in the solar system with startling accuracy. That's why this is often referred to as an ancient Greek computer. In 2006, Mike Edmonds from the Cardiff University in Wales used CT scans to reveal that the mechanism has tiny inner workings and hidden inscriptions that nobody had ever seen before, sparking new controversy and a new wave of scholarly research that, to this day, has left scientists scratching their heads, wondering how exactly the mechanism worked as the first computer in the world. To give you an example of how complicated this thing is, there have been at least 82 different pieces of the mechanism found so far. It was sitting at the bottom of the ocean for 2,000 years inside the Antikythera shipwreck. Then, in the early 1900s, divers began pulling up pieces of Greek shipwreck and the mechanism. It's now sitting at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where you can get a first-hand look at this incredibly mysterious piece of ancient tech. Number 6. The Iron Ashoka Pillar of Delhi. The Iron Ashoka Pillar of Delhi, located of course in New Delhi, India, seems to be rust-proof. It doesn't look like much from the outside. The iron pillar is only about 22 feet. It's sitting in an empty square, and there's really not much to look at unless you know what you're looking for. This pillar is actually 1,600 years old and made almost entirely of iron. If you know anything about iron sitting out in the sun for 1,600 years, you should know that this strange pillar should have become a pile of dust many years ago. It's the pillar's striking resistance to time that has labeled it an out-of-place artifact, meaning some experts claim that whatever technology was used to craft the Iron Ashoka Pillar of Delhi was futuristic for its time, and maybe even influenced by aliens. Some claims say that the pillar was crafted with 99.9% iron purity, alluding to the idea that the technology used to craft the pillar is now lost and can never be replicated again. But the truth is that the pillar is only 98% pure. And though it was certainly an amazing feat of engineering for the designers all those years ago, they likely did it all themselves using highly advanced mathematics and building techniques, with no help from aliens. Number 5. The Baghdad Battery. The Baghdad Battery is about 2,000 years old, coming from the ancient Parthian period, which lasted from between 250 BC to 250 AD. The exact science behind the Baghdad Battery is simple enough. It was a jar made out of clay with a stopper of asphalt and an iron rod stuck through a copper cylinder. When the jar was filled with vinegar or another type of electrolytic solution, it turned into a literal battery, able to produce roughly 1.1 volts. But while the science behind the ancient battery is easily explainable, its existence is not. What's really crazy is that the Baghdad battery was invented significantly earlier than any other battery was. And so far as we know, there have been no written records discovered that detail the functions of the jar. As for what a battery could have possibly been used for 2,000 years ago, the best thing scientists can come up with is that the batteries were used to make electroplate items, which is essentially the practice of placing a layer of something like gold onto the surface of a different layer, something like silver. This method of electroplating is still practiced in modern Iraq today, where the original Baghdad battery was found, though we definitely don't know if that's what this ancient relic was used for. Number 4. The Ulfbert Sword. The Ulfbert Sword is one of the most mysterious weapons ever discovered. This fascinating blade was crafted by the Vikings about 1,000 years ago, and there have been about 170 of them found so far by archaeologists. But what's really shocking and unbelievable about these Viking weapons is that they were forged using technology that wasn't available for another 800 years after the Viking era had already ended. Scientists to this day have no idea what the secret to the legendary Ulfbert sword is. In order to forge this kind of weapon, researchers have said that the Vikings would have needed a forge that could heat up to 3,000 degrees, which was not possible in human society until the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s and 1900s. So, how did they do it? Well, the truth is that nobody knows. The secret of these remarkably made weapons is even more confounding than the secrets of Damascus steel. And what makes the Ulfbert sword even more legendary is that it was only carried by the finest warriors of the time, and it was actually referred to as the ultimate weapon. Number 3. Zheng Heng's seismoscope. Zheng Heng worked as a Chinese scientist and expert mathematician back in the Han Dynasty. During his life, he crafted one of the most advanced pieces of scientific technology in the ancient Chinese world. This guy managed to put together a seismoscope to detect earthquakes, way before we had the Richter scale. He invented the first seismoscope back in 132 AD. His machine was so sensitive that he could indicate the exact direction an earthquake was coming from at least 100 miles away. And what makes this achievement even greater is that back in those days, even the inventor of the seismoscope himself believed that earthquakes had nothing to do with the Earth itself and were actually caused by wind and air movements. It was generally agreed in the Chinese culture that earthquakes happened because of some kind of disturbance between yin and yang, meaning that the heavens were displeased with whatever the current dynasty was doing. In any case, scientists are shocked that this guy created such a usable machine. Plus, nobody in modern science has been able to create an exact replica that reaches the same level of accuracy as Zheng Heng's seismoscope. Plus, the seismoscope is really cool. The device itself is a large jar with dragons clinging to its sides and toads sitting underneath the dragons. While its inner workings are a bit complicated, when an earthquake hits, a bronze ball will fall from one of the 8 dragons' heads into the mouth of the corresponding toad beneath it. That indicates which direction the earthquake is coming from. Number 2. Roman concrete. Roman concrete outlasts modern concrete by thousands of years. We use modern concrete to build everything in our society, and yet our modern concrete is known to start breaking down after as few as 50 years. On the flip side, even 1,000 years after the Roman Empire disintegrated, their concrete structures have not. And for a long time, scientists have been wondering why the ancient Romans could make such reliable concrete when modern humans could not. And as it turns out, there may have been a special ingredient that made Roman concrete grow stronger over time rather than weaker. According to a new report from Science magazine, a recipe for mortar written by a Roman engineer named Marcus Vitruvius in the year 30 BC detailed ingredients such as volcanic ash, seawater, lime, and a mixture of volcanic rock and wooden molds to be immersed in even more seawater. Apparently, seawater may have had something to do with the unbelievable strength of Roman concrete. That seems like something modern scientists definitely should have figured out a little sooner. After taking a core sample from a Roman building near Naples in Italy, scientists found that the seawater had actually dissolved some of the components of the volcanic ash, thereby creating additional binding minerals. A hydrothermal mineral formed inside the concrete that made it stronger as it got older. Basically, Roman ingenuity truly was the best, and it's a little strange that modern companies are still not using the old Roman formula for mixing their own concrete. Number 1. The wrinkled stone. The wrinkled stone may look like a piece of advanced technology, in which a stone was folded in such a way to fit into another piece of stone just like a jigsaw puzzle. But it's not. The scary truth about this wrinkled stone is that it's actually modern, and was crafted by a Spanish sculptor named José Manuel Castro López, who has been experimenting with hand sculptures carved skillfully from granite and quartz. He makes ordinary stone appear as though it's wrinkled, soft, and squishy. Jose even says that he thinks of himself more as a druid than a sculptor, trying to connect with each and every stone that he molds to breathe his own life into it. But here's why this is so fascinating. Jose has mastered the art of making stones look otherworldly, and he has done this simply by sculpting them. He's even made rocks look like they bleed and crafted other amazing illusions. It's not a far stretch to say that 2,000 years ago, or more, somebody else with a chisel, a rock, and a bit of imagination could do the exact same thing. Which of these inventions did you find the most impressive? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe for even more incredible videos every week.